From wooden spoons and because I said so, to screen time limits and gentle parenting, discipline has evolved, but are we any better at it? In this episode of Just Saying, we're joined by Dr. Larry Waldman, a clinical child and forensic psychologist with over 52 years of experience helping parents understand what really works when it comes to child behavior. He is the author of 8 insightful books, including Who's Raising Whom and Love Your Child More Than Your Ex. We'll explore how parenting has shifted across generations. Whether you grew up with a spanking or a timeout, or you're still figuring out your approach, this conversation is packed with timeless, practical wisdom. Hey friends, from spanking to screen time, discipline across the different generations, and is it working today? I'm joined with Dr. Larry Waldman. He is a clinical and child forensic psychologist, has over 52 years experience helping parents understand the behavior of their children. Thank you so much, Dr. Waldman, for joining me today.
Thank you. I should say I am recently retired, but...
Well, it doesn't mean that the knowledge isn't still up in your noggin, right?
At least for now.
Well, we better get started, right?
Right before it goes away.
So let's rewind a little bit. So tell me a little bit about your huge resume. I'd like to maybe give my audience a little idea of your background.
Well, thank you. Primarily I was a clinical forensic psychologist in private practice in Phoenix, Arizona, which meant I did a lot of work seeing people with various issues, certainly depression and anxiety and so on. I did a lot of marital work, and one of my areas of real expertise was working with parents and helping them manage their kids' behavior. I also did a number of parenting groups as well. So that was my primary job. I also was a consultant to Social Security, and I did quite a bit of professional speaking around the country and Canada, to various mental health associations on practice development, practice management, and I spoke frequently also to the community on various topics. I've authored 8 books in my career. Three of them pertain specifically to parenting. The first one is Who's Raising Whom? The second one was Coping with Your Adolescent. And one further down the road, actually during COVID, was Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex.
I think I could relate with all of those, actually.
Sure. I have a marriage book, How Come I Love Him But Can't Live With Him, is my marriage one. There's one on kind of self-growth entitled Too Busy Earning a Living to Make Your Fortune. And then the last one that came out about 6 months ago or so is entitled Silver Sex, Insights into Senior Sexuality.
Awesome. Oh, gosh, you've actually went the gamut. So you went all age groups, right?
I did this stuff for, as you pointed out earlier, for better than a half century. So yeah, you grow along with it. Sure.
Yeah, that's true. Let's talk about discipline across the different generations. Let's start with the 70s.
Well, I find it fascinating, really, because that's when I started in practice. Actually, prior to that, before I got into private practice, which was in 78, I started out as a school psychologist from 73 to 78, at which point I then obtained the doctorate, my PhD. I was working in the school district for those 5, 6 years and so on. And what I find interesting is that back in those days, if I sat down with parents, and I would typically try to meet with both mom and dad, I learned very early on it was not a good idea to meet just with mom and talk about parenting because what would happen is mom would go home and try to implement some of the things that we talked about, and dad would go, "What's this?" And so they would add to the conflict. Plus, mom would recognize all the bad things that dad was doing and try to correct him, and that didn't work either. So one of the points I always make, particularly when I was do parenting groups and so forth, is that I would only do a parenting group with a couple or not at all. So they both get the information at the same time. But one of the things I remember having to talk about a lot in the 70s, are the problems with paddling. I mean, that was very common.
Spanking. I got a lot of, in fact, I wrote about it in my book. I have a chapter. It's called The Belt, the Hand, or the Hanger. Because my dad would ask me, he'd go, "Which one do you want?" And I always took the belt because, believe it or not, all the other ones hurt the worst. But read my book; it's in there. But yeah. So, but that was more of like that was still. I was born in '73, so that had to have been, the rest. Well, I would say late '70s and '80s. So before I skip ahead, but yeah, paddling was something that it seems like people did back then, right? It was like,
yeah.
where
Well,
the
and my
hand
and
and what's
my
that
wife,
thing?
my wife was taught fourth grade for just about 30 years, and it was common for the principal at her school to have a paddle in his or mainly his or her office, and use it with kids. They would, could you imagine that today?
No. Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in the 7th grade, for those of you out there who know me and Alicia School, they had a paddle, and it was the 7th grade, no, it was the 8th grade. I got paddled in the 8th grade with a wooden paddle, and it had holes in it and everything, and he shellacked it. It was all pristine. And he asked me, "Do you want me to tell your parents what you did?" Which all I was doing was kissing a boy, but whatever. It was my first kiss, really. And so I could get a paddle or they could tell my mom. And because I thought, well, I could use this paddle and I bet you it's not going to be as hard as the belt, the hand, or the hanger. So I picked the paddle and I got swatted by our vice principal. And he actually made me pull my pants down,
Oh
underwear
my
on.
God.
Yeah,
Oh my
underwear
God.
on. Yeah, and he paddled my butt. He said my jeans were too thick or something. I'm
Could you
serious.
could you imagine? Just imagine if that were to happen today. I mean, there'd
No.
be lawsuits like nobody's business.
That's just crazy. I get the paddling because I'm not necessarily against it in some ways because obviously I had it done to me and I turned out okay, but I guess that's not really appropriate to say. But I mean, but yeah, paddling or spanking, I think CPS is going to be called nowadays. You can't do that anymore. And and the kids are a lot, hi in the background.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I hear my daughter in the background yelling at me in her room like she's under her breath. I don't want to be quiet. I don't want to be quiet. No. But she's got special needs, so we love her. But all right, let me back up. Yeah, so doing that nowadays would get you in some deep trouble. CPS definitely would be called. So
Oh,
I'm sorry that I interjected into your thing, but you started to bring up spanking, and I interjected with all my little stories. So please continue.
well, it shows the change because today it's the reverse. Obviously, I'm not an advocate for any kind of corporal punishment because the truth of the matter is that it's unsuccessful. I mean,
Right.
the the goal of discipline with children, basically, is to teach them how to behave in a responsible, independent kind of manner, and getting kids to behave briefly, if you will, out of fear, okay, out of fear of being spanked or paddled or whatever, is not going to work, because if they realize that, okay, right at this moment there's little chance of me getting spanked, well then what power is there, if you will, for them to behave well?
I mean,
Why?
I get what you're saying. I know a lot of people out there are going to say, "Well, I'd spank my kids and they turned out fine, and I'm going to still do it." And And I guess I said this before when we talked earlier. I was me and my husband, we also wanted to do an alternative to spanking, so we bought that book 1, 2, 3 Magic, and it talks about like counting your kids. That's one. Okay, that's two. And when you said that's three, that meant consequences, and you had to give them whatever consequence, you know. And I never really had to spank my kids. They all were actually really good kids. I never really had to, but they knew that if mommy got mad, they thought maybe they might. But I never went around going, "I'm going to smack you with this spoon." I never had to threaten them with like physical force or anything. But I think the fear of that might have been mom's going to go unhinged if I don't stop. Kind of worked a little bit in my favor, I would say. But I guess you have to really gear it towards your own kids. If you got a kid that just won't do anything you say, I mean, what do you do with a child like that? That's unruly. Like,
Well, as you suggested, there are consequences, but the consequences, that what we refer to as logical consequences, for that behavior. Uh, right off the top of my head, excuse me. I mean, like, I'm trying to think back now. I mean, my kids are your age, so
oh,
but our
young. No, just teasing.
Um, for example, one that comes to mind, at least. My older son. Let's see, he was playing little league, so I'd say he was about 12 or so, 12, 13. And it was Saturday morning, and one of his chores was to uh, clean and sweep the pool. He'd been instructed how to do that and so forth. He was a top swimmer, and there was no danger there, and so on. And he was to get that done before noon on Saturday, and so it it was Saturday morning, and here he's watching TV and messing with his brother. It's now 11:30, getting close to 12, and so on. And now, of course, I could have gotten up and said, "Hey, get off your lazy butt, and clean the pool." But that isn't how I want to do that, because, again, I don't believe that develops responsibility. Now, at 1 o'clock was Little League, his Little League game. And he loved his Little League game because he was one of the stars. He was a great hitter and a good fielder. He played shortstop, and so on. Okay, so it's now 12, and clearly he's blowing it off. And so now it comes to my mind. All right, he's chosen to neglect his responsibilities. Now, what do I do? Do I take him by the ear and pull him out there and get that darn pool clean? Blah blah blah. Is that going to develop the kind of responsibility and independence that I want him to achieve? And so, what I chose to do at about 10 minutes to 1, I went out there and started cleaning the pool. Now, 5 minutes later, he comes out all in his uniform and his cleats and say, "Dad, what are you doing? We got to leave. The game's going to start. The coach wants me." And I said, "Josh, I'm sorry, but you chose to neglect this chore, so it's now up to me to do it. We'll get there when I'm done. When you fail to meet responsibilities, there are consequences. Oh, Dad. So we left, of course, late. He missed the warm up, and so on. The game actually started about like 1:20 or something like that. And I went to the coach, and the coach knew me and he knew what I did and so on. And I said, "Look, coach, we're late because Josh, neglected some responsibilities, and I had to teach him a little lesson, and so forth. Now it's totally up to you, but my suggestion is for coming late and missing the warm ups, he should go warm up and maybe miss an inning or two." And he said, "Hey, fine by me." So the game started, and Josh had to run a couple laps and sit on the bench and so forth, and there it was. And as far as I'm concerned, it's those kinds of consequences that I think make a difference. Now, it goes without saying that on the other hand, of course, we as parents need to, and this is very important, catch our kids when they're good. So it's not discipline. When I talk about child management, it's not just discipline, if you will, it's management. Okay? And by that I mean is that what we really want them to do is to be responsible and for us to be rewarding of that. I mean, and this goes way up the ladder. How many people find themselves in jobs where the only time the manager or boss speaks to them is when?
When they either need something or when they're mad at them.
Right, when they screw up. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that's the classic management style. If the worker is doing whatever it is they're supposed to be doing, the boss might be fine with it, but do you say anything? No. Only when they catch them screwing up, making an error, then they interact with them. Well, what does that lead to? Loyalty? Does it lead to the worker going above and beyond? No. Why would they? It's the only time they're besides which, if they go above and beyond it, they could conceivably make a mistake, and then they're going to get the wrath of the boss.
And do you think that okay, so I'm lucky where I work remote and my bosses will actually send me, I know this sounds terrible, but they send me because they want to tell me how much they appreciate me. They'll send me like a $25 gift card to Amazon or something. And I know not everybody can do that, but that is their way of saying, a big hug since we're virtual, we're all online and everything. And that's their big wet kiss. Well, do you think, and, I'm not aging them or anything, but I think that, nowadays, I just think that people don't think they don't think that way. It's all negative, negative, negative. I mean, it's almost like you have to shake the tree and say, come on, like you said, you have to give people some positive feedback so they know that they're doing good and that they feel appreciated and that they want to continue doing the same thing that they're doing, or maybe even doing it. They want to work harder. I feel like I want to work harder for my management team because I know that they appreciate the work that I do. I just feel like, I don't know, maybe that's getting lost, over time.
Well, again, parents aren't trained.
Right. That's true.
You become a parent. That's it. And it's, if you think about it, it's one of the most important things as adults that we do is raising a human being. And yet, we get some training we do driver training to drive a car, things like that. We get no training whatsoever on how to be
why don't you write us a manual? No, I'm sorry.
Well, That's what my Who's Raising Whom
Okay,
is.
that's right. That's right. Okay, get the book. Who's raising who?
You know, you just reminded me. A 2 weeks ago or so, we were doing some traveling. We were at the airport, and we were waiting for our flight, and we're seated there, and close to me is a mom, a young mom with an infant. I mean, she's a cute little girl, cute as a bug, probably 5, 6 months, probably 6 months old, and she's holding her, and so on. And dad, you can see dad is nearby. Anyhow, dad sits down, and she gives the little tyke to him because she wants to do something, whatever. And as soon as she hands her, the little girl, to him, he takes it. She starts to cry. Okay. And mom gets up, okay, and maybe she was just going to go to the bathroom. I don't know what she was going to do, or buy lunch or something. Mom gets up, but then she sees the baby, crying, and the baby looks at mom and sees mom looking at her, and cries even louder. And mom sits back down and takes the baby from the father. And instantly, as soon as she took the baby shut up, quiet. Okay. Here, remember the title of my book is Who's Raising Whom? And here it is. This little girl, 6 months of age, is doing a masterful job of raising her parents. And these parents, now I didn't butt in because it's none of my business, and if I even said something, they would have probably been upset anyhow. But I was amused by it, if you will, because this is what's going on. They don't even realize that they're being manipulated, by an infant. Yes, they don't think
that would be me.
They don't think that I can't tell you how many times parents said, "Oh, they're not that smart," and they're not. Oh, yes,
yeah,
they are.
Yes, they are.
And it starts very, very early. Now, if mother had just walked away, the little girl would have cried for a little bit, but as soon as she saw that mother was out of sight, she would have taken what she got, which was dad.
Right.
But when she cried and she saw that mother turned around and stopped and made eye contact, this little girl already, this crying is working. And there you go.
So, I guess, is that kind of like the same thing with, so for the moms out there that do have a toddler, or not a toddler, even an infant, what do you think about the letting them cry at night, and or at what age do you try not to go in and because like me, I'm a helicopter parent. I talk about it. It's terrible to my kids' detriment. But I was like, the moment my child cried, I was at their crib the moment that they cried. Is there something to letting them cry it out, or what is your advice on that?
Well, again, you should consult with your pediatrician. Obviously, with infants, their stomachs can only take so much milk and so forth. So for the first couple of months, you can't expect them to sleep through the night.
Right.
But there comes a time, I'm guessing somewhere around 6-8 months of age, where, if you nurse them or bottle feed them, whatever you're doing, let's say the last feeding is at 10 o'clock at night, whatever. They have dinner, and then maybe at 10 o'clock at night, they should be able to probably make it till 5 or 6 in the morning. Okay. Now, what's going to happen? If the parent hears a squeak, whatever, what is, and here's the $24 question. What is the child learning? They are smart, just like that little 6-month-old who was.
They want you to pick them up and bring them to bed with you. And you kind of,
Yes.
and you in some way want that baby to hold on to as well. And then you realize when they start to get older that was a mistake, that you should not have done that in the very beginning, because that is not their bed, that is yours.
Right. Well, that's one of the mistakes parents make for sure. So much for intimacy, privacy, and I won't get into that. But yes, again, the child doesn't know what's good, bad, or indifferent. Okay, and so it's up to us as parents. I mean, we're older, hopefully wiser. We should know what's best for them, and what's best for them is that they get a full night's sleep from, like, say, at least 10 in the evening till 6 in the morning, and so on. And if they have to cry a little bit, it's not going to kill them. It'll be just fine. And they'll come to realize, here's the other thing, we put night lights on and so forth, and I've heard this so many times, why do we put night lights on when the kid's, an infant? Remember, he or she just came out of a dark womb. As far as I know, I don't think there's any night lights in the womb. Okay,
That's true.
yeah. So, and they have vision at that time before they're born. So they're accustomed to dark. Okay, we put in night lights because we like it. Okay, but here's the problem. What if you go over to your parents' house, one night or so, and they don't have any night lights?
Because
Now
you
what do
trained
you
them,
do?
because you trained them now to want or need a nightlight when they didn't need it in the beginning.
Exactly.
Ooh, do I get a sticker? No.
Yeah, very good. See, why do we do that?
I don't know. That's so true.
Because the child now believes, because that's all they know, that when I go to bed, there's a nightlight. Okay, or a sound machine. Some people use sound machines. Okay, fine, but you better be prepared, because if you're going to take that kid and put them to bed some other place, you better bring that damn nightlight and sound machine with you, or guess what? It's not going to happen. And so it's good for the child to sleep through the night. And by the way, it's also good for the mommy and the daddy to sleep through the night too. So
They always say when you put your kids down, when you put your baby down, you should be sleeping too, no matter what time of day it is. Go lay down, because you need to get the same amount of rest. You need that much sleep. And also your body is doing, when you first have a baby, your hormones are crazy and you're not yourself. But what you kind of explained was, okay, so if they go to grandma's house and they don't have their sound machine or their lights or whatever, that is because it's consistency, and which is the same thing in discipline, because you need consistency with your consequences, right?
absolutely.
And, okay, so what are appropriate consequences? I mean, I guess per age group. Okay, so let me just, before I ask that question, I'm going to tell you about a consequence my husband gave to my stepdaughter when she lived with us half the time almost, but then in high school she lived with us full time, and she would slam her door a lot. And he kept saying, don't slam your door. Please don't slam your door, Jordan, because the door didn't do anything to you. He thinks he's funny. My husband, he thinks he's funny, but he's like, the door never did anything to you. Don't slam it. And so she would keep doing it. And whenever she got mad, she slammed the door. So he went and took the door off the hinges, and there goes her privacy. And then when she started talking back and was disrespectful, he says, Jordan, if you're not going to be respectful, then you don't need the things that I provide for you. So he went into her room, and when she went to her friends. When she came back, all she had left on her bed was a bed and her blanket and a pillow and her clothes. That was it. That's all, or, a few clothes. And he says, okay, when you can start to be respectful, you'll get your items back gradually, and then you'll get your door back. And then we're done, but you have to start showing respect and stop slamming the door. And so that was how he handled that situation. And so I guess it's different for everybody, but she did square up and stop slamming the door, and that all worked. And I don't know if she'll ever remember, but she did start understanding that, like, we weren't having the disrespect, you know what I'm saying? And so, but okay, so appropriate consequences, I guess is it like per age or age group? I guess, do you know what is an appropriate consequence, I guess, if somebody's asking?
Well, of course, it has to be age related. I mean, obviously, there are different things we do at different stages. Yes, slamming the door. I've been a big advocate of removing the door when you have preteens and teenagers and so on, and that works. Now, and one of the things that we have to recognize again is that the consequences need to be short term, so that the child, doesn't, hold on to anger, but realizes it's a consequence to this particular behavior, and that should do the job. So I would probably, remove the door for 24 hours, something like that, or and so on. So yeah, there are a lot of different kinds of consequences, and the idea is that, the parent wants to, be thinking about it, and that it relates to the crime, if you will. So like back to my little league incident, with my son. Yeah, I mean, he failed to be responsible, and so I then showed him, by failing to be responsible, that forced me to do his job, which meant that we were late for. So it all came back onto him, and so on. So logical, and by the way, sometimes the best logical consequence is no consequence at all, which is to turn around and walk out. When a child sometimes is snotty or something and says "Woo," or something, why are they saying that? What's their goal?
To get your reaction.
Exactly. Well,
Gold
if there's
sticker.
no reaction, another point. Yes, good for you. Yeah. God, your stars are building up here.
My kids do it all the time, and I fall into that trap of like I don't want to hear that, or don't be so rude, or I say something back and they say something back, and then
right. And now you're like a 3-year-old in the sandbox.
Yeah, that's true.
So if they say something snotty like that, and then what did you do? You just said, hey, this really works. This gets my mom's goat. Yeah. No. Turn around, walk out. Now,
Yeah.
maybe, by the way, that could be near dinner time.
That's true.
Okay.
And they're like, "What's for dinner, Mom?" I'm like, "I don't know." Fend for yourself. That's what we use. That's the word we use in my house. It's fend for yourself night.
Well, I mean, in that situation, if I had walked out and it's dinner time, I would waited a little while and maybe gone back into the fridge and gotten myself a cup of yogurt or something, and had my dinner and walked out. And if he had said, well, what are we having for dinner? I said, I don't know. You made me feel like not wanting to be in the kitchen. Walk out.
That's a good one. I'm gonna use that one. I'm putting that in my mental vault. My mom and dad would say, "You're grounded." Like, would be one of my things. If I wasn't punished by spanking, they would say, or they would spank me and then still punish me by saying, "You're grounded until further notice," is what they would say. Or I know, and then they say, or until. But really, what it was until they felt like they're not mad anymore. then I wasn't grounded, and I didn't have like a specific day. It could be 3 days. It was like torture in your room. It's like solitary confinement because, back then all I had was like my half of the bunk bed and like my dresser, and we didn't have TVs and Game Boys, and we didn't have stuff like that. We didn't even have books. Like I had encyclopedias. Like if I wanted to read, I had to go into the laundry room above the washer and dryer and get an encyclopedia to look at.
I need to provide a few little guidelines here. And right now we're still talking about discipline. I want to get to the other side. But one, the kid needs to know what they did wrong. Okay? Just
Right.
like in the case of the Little League again. I said, Josh, you failed to do this job, so therefore, so right away I point out clearly to him, what his misdeed was. It's not like, you're a lazy SOB or whatever. No, you got to. The kid needs to know what he or she did that was wrong. Okay. Also, the consequence needs to be immediate. A lot of times parents will say, "Oh, that birthday party that you're going to have on Sunday," and we're talking Thursday right now.
Right.
You're not going. Well, wait a minute. Come Sunday, and now he or she can't go. And so forth. It's like, how does that relate to the misdeed back 4 days ago or 3 days
Right.
ago?
I agree.
That's got to be connected. So it's got to be immediate and short term. Okay. Josh paid his consequence by being late and sitting out the first 2 innings. Done. Over.
But yeah, like you didn't go and say, okay, no more baseball for the rest of the season.
Because
my
that's
mom. Go ahead.
Parents say that stuff, and we say it out of anger, and even they know that's baloney. It's not.
Well, true and not true. If you're not going to follow through with it, don't say it. Don't threaten if you're not going to follow through with your consequence. Like my mom and dad, I'm going to say it again. I know this isn't a one-on-one therapy session, but my mom and dad love my mom, love her. But they thought I was on drugs in high school when I was not. So they put me in a drug rehab. And back then you had to wait for your test results to come back for them to say, oh yeah, she's not on drugs. And I told them over and over again, like I'd never done drugs. I was one of those overachievers in school in the way of like I did sports and I was the school photographer and I did the yearbook and I was an officer and I was involved in school greatly. And so my mom and dad said as the consequence for them having to put me in a drug rehab that I could not play basketball that season. And so my last year in high school, I was supposed to letter in all 3 of my sports, but I didn't get to letter that year in basketball because they took my season away from me. And I mean, talk about harsh. And then all it did was left me scarred, really. I mean, they took away something that was super. And I would definitely say out there in podcast land, listeners, don't take something away that's going to keep your kid out of trouble. Like a sport is going to keep them occupied and active and social. Do not take them out of something like that as a punishment. Do something else, Nowadays, you could take away a phone, a game, their internet. Take away their internet. That's like losing a limb, I think, for my son.
Yeah. But again, briefly.
Yeah. So like if you take it away a night or something.
I remember this. See, you're making me recall things. I was working with a mom and so on, and dad, and I talked to them about this about keeping your punishments or consequences, if you will, short. Okay. And the mother says, yeah, that's a good one. And I said, why do you say that? She says, well, a while back, last week or so, Billy did something and I said, no TV for the week. Okay. And I went, oh, okay. I said, how did that work for you? And she said, not really well. I said, well, how do you know that? She said, well, a couple of days later, Billy said to me, Mom, can I watch TV? And the mother said, No, you're grounded. And then Billy said, Well, why am I grounded? And the mother looked at me and said, I'm ashamed to say this, but I said to him, I don't remember. I don't know why, but I know
Oh
you're
my God.
grounded to Friday. Okay.
That's
And
funny.
so I looked at her and said to her, So explain to me what value was this punishment? It's supposed to decrease a certain misbehavior when you don't know what the hell the misbehavior was. See
Yeah.
that's the craziness of it. So you keep it short.
Yeah. Keep it
Now,
short. Okay.
okay, let
Okay.
me
So,
talk about the other side
okay,
because
please.
that's even more important. The other side, and the more even the more important side, and you even referred to it in terms of how your supervisors reward you, is the positive side, okay? And that is to catch them when they're good, okay, to reinforce this good behavior so that the child learns that it pays off to be good. Okay? It's not like crickets when the kid's doing what he's supposed to. I call that the sleeping dog theory of parenting. If the kid's doing what he or she is supposed to do, you leave him alone. You only interact with them when they misbehave. And like we've talked about, like some managers do the same thing. That's
Right.
their lousy managing style. No, you reverse that. You attend to them when they are behaving. Remember, they want your time and attention. Well, at least until they become teenagers. Then they don't want it at all, except they want your money and your car, but not your attention. So, catching them when they're good. So, like, the following Saturday when Josh was out there again, doing the pool, I came out there and we chatted a little bit and hey, oh, look, you're doing a nice job and whatever. So, we catch them being good. Okay. And we're also being very specific. Here's the other thing. And I hear this all the time. I hear parents say, "Oh, way to go, Billy! Nice job! Proud of you!" Okay, that is not what we call reinforcement. That's a compliment. Okay. Here's an important question: why do we reinforce and praise our kids?
Oh, asking me.
Yeah. Well,
um,
I don't see anybody else. So.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Am I going to win my star? Why are we praising them?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to tell, so that they know that the behavior that they're doing is the one that we want, or, showing the behavior that we want.
Bingo.
Yay.
Right. We want them to continue doing this positive behavior, whatever it is. Right?
Right.
There's your star. You get another one. So when you say, way to go, Johnny, or proud of you, and so on, does the kid know what exactly he did to get that? Not. No, not at all. Particularly when they're younger. No. So we need to be very specific. Billy, I like the way you, whatever it is they did, so that they can see it and they can know. So Billy is whatever playing quietly with his sister. They're not fighting and so on. And you walk in. Many times parents would walk in, go, "Oh, that's nice," and walk out, right? Duh. Now, as soon as you hear some squabbling, what do? You come back in and then you interact. See, we've got it, frankly, ass backwards. No. Okay. If you see your kids playing nicely together, you walk in, maybe rub their hair, tickle them a little bit, and say, I really appreciate when you guys can play, so quietly and so harmoniously together and taking turns. Maybe when we're done, or when you're done, we'll bake brownies. You were planning to bake brownies anyhow, but now
Right.
we can use it as a reinforcer. And of course, they can each have the first one out of the oven, something like that. So again, we want to be specific. It's really important, bad or good. Again, it's not like I don't like your attitude. No, So we catch them being good, and if they're bad, we let them know what they've done as well.
So like a ratio of like 3-1. Try to say, or just try to keep in your mind, more positive and less of the negative will actually get you the positive results that you're looking for, basically, right? But what do you do?
I don't know about any ratio per se.
Okay, I'm spitballing there, but
yeah,
okay.
right. Okay. Yes. I mean, I like to say my kids, manipulated me all through their childhood. They behaved relatively well, and they got my attention. And they knew very well. I mean, I was very good at ignoring them. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of turning your head. Just turn your head. I'm not going to buy into this, whatever is going on, or walking out of the room, and so on. Or many times, not many times, but often, I would time myself out. I'd go into my room, lock my door, and turn on the TV or read a book or something.
Right.
They're knocking on the door. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is something that a lot of parents have to deal with currently in the struggles of like today parenting and the discipline, and parents feel unsure about how to discipline their kids because there's judgment and pressure with like social norms and social media and all that. What do you do with your kid in today's current times when they're disrespectful? And I mean, like the first time, like how do you teach respect through your consequences? How do you teach them respect? Because it seems like a lot of kids are. Some kids, don't get me wrong, their nature is just sweet. They just are kind. But some are a little ornery little turds, and they have disrespect for their parents and others. And what do you do with a kid like that? Therapy?
Well,
No, I'm just
I don't know. I don't think they're born that way. First off, I would take a look at myself, because remember, the greatest teachers that kids have are their parents.
True.
And so if a kid is being disrespectful, particularly at an early age, I would be inclined to take a look at how mom and dad are treating each other, because that's where a lot of that comes from. Okay, so that's one point. Also, again, as I think we touched on this earlier, many times kids are saying this stuff because they get a reaction back. Don't
True.
give them that satisfaction. Not. Walk away. Walking away, turning away is very, very powerful. When I say this when I used to say this to parents when I was doing my workshops and parenting groups and so on, many of them go, "Oh, that's ridiculous," blah, blah, blah. And I would just say, "Just try it, just try it," and they never fail. They'd come back and say, "I can't believe it. I walk out of the room and it's like that. They follow me. It's like, or they're banging on my door. They don't like to be isolated, okay? And that can be a a very good consequence. Now, if we're talking teenagers, well, then there might have to be some kind of response cost to that, perhaps, because again, remember, what's our goal? Our goal is to raise independent, responsible kids. Okay, so they grow up to be independent and responsible adults. And that was what guided me and my wife through this parenting stuff. Many times I'm asking myself the question, is what I'm going to do here or what am I doing here, is that going to teach responsibility? Is that going to teach independence and so on? Now, sometimes, of course, we have the reverse situation where parents indulge their kids. They're overindulgent with money and whatever, and so on. And that can be just as dangerous, because the truth of the matter is, if a parent is indulging their child, they are sending them one very clear message. They think they're telling them that you love them with all that you're giving them. And that's part of it. That's true. But you know what the other message is?
Mm-mm.
Another star possible. Come on.
I don't know, because this is something that I do. Oh my God. Maybe I need to start taking away.
If we're indulgent, accepting a lot of inappropriate behavior, overcompensating them, and so forth, not making them live up to their responsibilities and so on, we're teaching them that we think they're not capable.
And then also, if the money goes away and you can't give them those things, monetary things, then what is that saying too? I mean, they might take it a certain thing. Okay, can I ask you a question? 2 more questions, because I know I've taken so much of your time today. So, let's, for the audience out there that are listening, what's one thing every parent should stop doing right now? And then one thing that they should start doing.
Well, let me start with the last one. The last one is,
positive reinforcement.
Catch them when they're good.
Okay,
Pay more attention on the positive side. It'll come back with big dividends. Right. As far as the other side, what you don't like, I think one of the best parental consequences is leaving the room. We call that extinction. Behavioral psychology refers to this as extinction. You're removing yourself, removing the possibility of them getting reinforced. If parents learn those 2 things, they're way ahead of.
So positive reinforcement, catch them when they're good, and give yourself a timeout. And also, too, when you're angry about something, giving yourself a timeout leaves you time to reflect and think of how you want to handle the situation, instead of like blowing up or making it worse by anger. And so in some cases where parents fly off the handle or are too angry about an outburst or something, it's best to go compose your thoughts and structure your whatever it is you're going to do, or do nothing, like you said. And sometimes the kids read into that as like, oh, I made mom unhappy in some way, or their whole thing is they don't want to make you unhappy. They don't want you to see you sad or angry or anything like that. So I guess maybe sometimes just not doing anything at all. Like you said, I don't feel like cooking tonight, or I don't feel like going to, Disneyland next weekend because whatever.
Wait, that's a week from now.
I've actually done that one time. I'm terrible. Take another star away.
You reminded me again. We opened a mail one day, and there's a picture of our son going through a red light with his car. Okay, and of course we lay this on his desk, and so he comes home, and he's he didn't tell us that this happened, and he comes home, and of course he goes in his room and he comes out and he says, well, I bet you're going to what? You're going to take the car away? You're going to yell at me? And I looked at him. I said, "How do you intend to handle this?" He looked at me like, "What are you going to do?" Well, I said, because if you go and pay the ticket, or accept the ticket, then your insurance is going to rise, which is now going to cost me extra money, which I'm not about to pay. So unless you have some other source of income, which I'm not aware of, you won't be able to drive because you don't have insurance.
Right.
Well, what am I going to do? Well, then you have an option here of attending this class, for a little less, but you're going to have to find a way to pay for it. Well, how am I going to pay for it? And I said, well, Mom was just talking about needing her windows cleaned, and I'd like my car detailed, which I had already taught him how to do. Well, I guess, And then, of course, you have to give up your Saturday, which he hated. You have to give up your Saturday to take this class.
Right.
See, now if I yelled at him, now what's he thinking? Is he thinking, oh, my dad's so great. He cares about me driving safely. No, that's not what he's thinking. He's such a damn jerk. No, see, we want to keep the focus. When we lose it, we've lost the focus of, he went through a red light. That's unsafe. Okay. So it's going to, I want him to stay, focused on that. And there's going to be a fair amount of work he's going to have to do to undo it, to undo the problem.
That's true. Okay. So we're going to leave it there, but takeaways for teachable moments, catch him doing the positive things, the things that you want to see them do generally on a normal basis. And,
be specific about it.
And be specific about it. Keep your consequences to a like, not a minimum, but like relevant to the situation, and don't make them so great that you forget why they got punished, right?
No longer than 24 hours in most cases.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm going to post on my website, your books and where they can find you, but let's just say it right here because, my website still is in the, getting launched phase. So, where can my guests right now, before they can go to my website, where can they find your books? Give me some titles that are relevant, because remember, you said in the beginning, but let's go back over it.
Who's Raising Whom?
I love that one.
Coping with your adolescent. Do you want all of them or just the parenting ones?
Go over them all. Okay. You know what? The one about the exes, I think maybe we should do another segment on that one.
That's a whole different story.
Uh-huh.
Right. Well, the three parenting books is Who's Raising Whom, Coping with Your Adolescent, and Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex.
Love those. Okay, Dr. Larry Waldman.
And you can get them on Amazon.
On Amazon. Awesome. I think I'm going to actually go, although my kids are 32, 24, and 15, I still have a baby bird in the nest right now. I think I could use a little bit of that guidance. And I really do appreciate you spending some time with us and having a conversation about something that parents often struggle with, because out there, we're all being judged and they're afraid. I think parents are afraid sometimes to discipline harshly or to discipline at all, because they're afraid what their kids are going to do. And nobody wants any of their dirty laundry on social media, right? So anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Bye-bye.
Low, talking about the days we used to know. VCR tapes and dial-up tones, raising kids living with achy bones.